This is a Relay project.
Real Talk starts right now. Here's Ryan Jesperson.
It's one of the wildest times in recent memory in Alberta politics, and that is saying something. Alberta's Premier Danielle Smith joins us in an exclusive in this episode of the show. We'll jump right into it. Before we do, want to let you know that this episode is happening with the presenting sponsorship and support of Hanson Distillery, producers of Alberta's finest whiskey. As our province prepares to roll out the new Made in Alberta whiskey mandate, Hanson is proud to be at the forefront of this exciting movement, showcasing Alberta's finest ingredients and craftsmanship. From Hanson's vast wheat fields, look at these mountain-fed rivers that Alberta boasts, those streams. Hanson celebrates everything that makes Alberta's whiskey world-class. Local agriculture, homegrown innovation, and the entrepreneurial spirit of Alberta's businesses. Hanson Distillery, where Alberta's spirit is made right here. You can learn more by checking out their recent blog posts. You can shop their whiskey online or at the beautiful Hanson Distillery in Alberta's capital city on 174th Street, 111th Avenue, and of course, wherever fine liquor is sold. Learn more at hansondistillery.com. As we welcome Alberta's Premier, Danielle Smith, to our studio in the historic Mercer Warehouse in downtown Edmonton. Your eyebrows raised when I said it's one of the wildest times.
I think there's been wilder times in politics.
What has been wilder in Alberta than right now?
Well, you tell me why you think this is wild. I remember, there were times where it was pretty rough during the final years of Ralph Klein. I think that, we've had some issues, but I don't think that we've seen quite that level of anger. I think on balance, people are pretty happy with what we're doing.
Well, I guess it depends on who you ask. Yeah. But you've got rumblings around an Alberta pension plan breaking away from CPP and an Alberta police force. There's a growing movement, it would seem, within your party around Alberta separating from the country entirely. You've invoked the notwithstanding clause on 2 separate occasions, technically 4 times within 3 weeks. And amid it all, you're smiling and shaking hands with and signing a document in partnership with Ottawa, and people are trying to wrap their minds around it. I mean, I think that qualifies as one of the wildest times in Alberta's history.
Well, you always have people who are going to agree with things that you do and people who are going to disagree. But I think people wanted us to work with the federal government. That was one of the mandates that I got after there was that historic change at the federal level. I think people were anticipating it was going to be a CPC government. There were some frustrations that it didn't happen. And that's what I think caused that independence sentiment to boil over. And that's what I told the Prime Minister. I said, I think that your predecessor created this movement, but you and I can end it if we come to an agreement to develop our resources, get rid of these bad laws, and get us back on a track again. Because I can tell you that when people are making money, creating jobs, opening up businesses, doing well, that solves a lot of problems. And so I was pretty pleased. It took a lot of months to work towards that, but I think that is going to be the overriding sentiment that people have if we do end up going to a vote.
It doesn't seem to have ended the separatist sentiment. Were you surprised showing up a couple of weekends ago at the UCP AGM, signed document, barely the ink dry, by the booze?
I had asked the question, do you think, I said, I think we can agree that Canada works better today than it did a couple of days ago. And that was maybe my misjudgment. People had not had a chance, really, I don't think, to digest the change. They had been angry for a long time, probably thinking that we were not going to get to an agreement. But when I saw the reaction that the Prime Minister got at the Chamber, when I saw the reaction that I got when I went to the CAOEC and EPAC conference or a luncheon the day on the Monday after, I think when people take a look at this, the enthusiasm that we're hearing about expansion of our pipelines and optimization, the enthusiasm I'm hearing about finally building some new power, I think when these things start happening, people are going to see that it was pretty significant to get a couple of those major wins. The end of the emissions cap, the end of the net zero power regs applying to Alberta. It's going to be an extraordinary change.
So your critics following that AGM are describing your party, the UCP, now as a separatist party. You've got Jeff Rath from the Alberta Prosperity Project prominently calling for your resignation. Are we watching this separatist faction take over the party?
No, I think that what we're seeing is that there's still people who want to be convinced, and I don't want to diminish that sentiment. People were really angry, angrier than I have seen them in a long time. And our own polling, and I think it's been validated by independent pollsters, show that the sentiment for independence went up to 37%. So when you see that high level of dissatisfaction, you've got to do something about it. And so that's what I'm doing. I'm working through demonstrating that Canada can work. And I think it's going to be up to the Prime Minister to make sure he lives up to his end of the bargain. I'm going to live up to my end of the bargain. And I think slowly but surely we'll persuade Albertans that we're into a new era. And it'll be very positive.
Talking to Thomas Lukaszuk a few days ago on the show, the Forever Canadian petition, as you know, the results verified, the signatures verified by Elections Alberta. He says that you have yet to take a definitive position on this. And he wanted me to ask you his proposed question point blank. Do you agree that Alberta should remain in Canada?
Well, I think it's obvious by my actions. The answer is yes, and I have to persuade others that that's the case as well. I mean, I think that it's obviously not a blank check, right? That that Mark Carney had some commitments that he has to do. If he continued doing the net zero power regs, if he continued doing the emissions cap, if he continued to demonize our energy industry and put them potentially in jail for greenwashing, if he did all of the policies that Trudeau had put into place, I'd have a harder time convincing Albertans that we'd turn the page. But he entered into that discussion in good faith, as have I. And I think together we understand that the world has changed. We need to be an energy superpower that's going to be good for Alberta. It's going to be good for the country. It's going to improve our relationship with the United States because they want our energy too. And I think it's going to be proof in the action. And so I've got a lot of convincing to do, but I'm prepared to do that work.
Bill last week took power basically, I guess, away from the courts, took power away from the chief electoral officer, reassigns it to your justice minister. This after the courts had ruled that a separation question was unconstitutional. You referred to the courts as gatekeepers here, said you don't think they should be part of the equation. Do you have faith in the judiciary?
Well, there's a couple things I'd say. I've watched the courts, as you know, because I was in the same position as you were on the air a number of years ago. And you have to remember that oftentimes when Parliament makes a change to a law, the court will determine that the case before them is moot. The one that I remember most vividly is when Brian Peckford was trying to get a ruling on whether the government had violated the mobility rights, Section 6 of the Charter, and then the Trudeau government ended those actions on October 1st. And the court said, well, given that these restrictions are no longer in place, we're not going to hear the case. So that is the dialogue that happens. Parliament and legislatures are supreme. We can pass a law anytime we like. We can change a law anytime we like. We can revise a law anytime we like. That's because we're the democratically elected body. And so what we observed is that the spirit of the law was not being executed as intended. The spirit of the law was to give citizens the right to put a question forward. And whether it was the chief electoral officer who was the gatekeeper or a court that was being the gatekeeper, that was not the intention. So I know that the justice minister has that same spirit. He wants to be permissive in allowing different questions to go forward. And it's up to us as a government, when we hear the will of the people, to implement the policy in a constitutional way. And that's what we'll do. But we don't want to stop the conversations from happening, because there have been a couple of cases that I have heard that did not get accepted by the chief electoral officer. One was an outright refusal. The other one went to court, and we just thought, you know what, this isn't the way it should be. You shouldn't have a chief electoral officer deciding to let questions go that he likes and to block questions he doesn't like. And that's not the intention of the law.
That legislation that your government introduced also gives the Alberta Prosperity Project, that's that separatist group, the ability to reapply to start collecting signatures for an independence referendum. People are trying to square this circle. They're saying, you go on the record, you say that you believe that Alberta should remain in Canada, but time and time again, you're making it easier for the separatists. What do you say to those folks?
Well, I think Thomas made it easy for the separatists. He's the one who put forward a referendum question saying, do you want to remain in Canada, yes or no? I don't know if he gave any thought to what would happen if the no movement won. And so I think now he's saying, oh, gee, don't put it to a referendum now, just put it to a vote of the legislature. But that's not what the document said. So I think that Thomas was the one who opened the question. And I think that there's a lot of people who signed that document upset that those who want independence may have signed on too, hoping for to be able to piggyback on the effort of the Forever Canada folks. So my view is if they can get signatures in their own right on their own question, then they should prove it. I believe that we are going to continue demonstrating that Canada works. I hope that we'll be able to persuade enough people that Canada works, but we'll see if they're able to get their number of signatures. But I think that they that to me would be a better process, is to have the sentiment tested by a petition campaign to see if they can get their signatures.
Is a referendum inevitable, and if so, when?
I'll watch and see. And we put Thomas's Forever Canada petition calling for a referendum to a committee, or we will. We have to figure out the composition of that committee. I think we had 10 sitting days from the time it was introduced into the legislature to do that. And so the committee will do an assessment based on what they're seeing at the time, what the different ways are that we could deal with it. But I don't want to prejudge that outcome, but we'll be making a decision on the composition of that committee in the new year.
Are you considering an early election?
I have almost 2 years left in my mandate.
Well,
I got a lot
do.
of
That's
I got
why
a lot
I'm
of work
asking
to do.
about an early one. A lot of people think that there's one coming as early as the spring.
You know what? We lost momentum on our health reforms when we had the election in the middle. It disrupted our changes for 3 months, and we're right at a really crucial point in the implementation of our healthcare reforms. And so I want to have the time to see those work, and so I'm intending to go to October of 2027.
Okay, I want to ask you about healthcare reforms in a moment, but that signed MOU, that Alberta-Ottawa Energy Agreement, let's call it, has it changed anything on your end regarding what you're hearing from investors, conversations that your office is having, perceived interest maybe in private interest that would pay for the thing?
Well, I can tell you the immediate impact we're going to see is that we're going to see conversations with Enbridge about their open season to expand their pipeline, 400,000 barrels a day. We're going to probably see Trans Mountain very quickly go to market with an open season for 360,000 barrels per day. We're going to see South Bow maybe partner with an American company to expand their Keystone XL system by hundreds of thousands of barrels. I'll be talking with both Doug and Wab Canoe about perhaps pipelines going to Churchill and Thunder Bay. There's conversations happening already about oil by rail to Nova Scotia. All of that is going to be going ahead. In addition to, I think we've heard about 6,000 megawatts of new potential power projects that are going to go ahead, including new ones that are going to power data centers. That would not have happened without this MOU. And then I'll do some more work. We've got our, on the bitumen pipeline that is tied to the Pathways project, we have put forward July 1st as the timeline for doing the technical analysis of that, identifying the port, identifying the route, beginning the engagement with First Nations, and then consultation will follow after that. So we've got a bit more time on that. I've always anticipated that the northern Gateway 2.0, let's call it, although it will very likely be a different port. Port of Prince Rupert seems to be a much, much better port. I always anticipated that would be the last of these other projects, but none of those other projects would have been able to go ahead without restoring the business confidence so that our producers could start expanding their operations. So you'll see a lot of activity very soon.
I think some political watchers were surprised when your government somewhat abruptly announced that it was breaking off talks on chartered surgical facilities in Red Deer and Lethbridge with companies that were owned in part by Sam Maraish. Of course, everybody knows the name now amid everything with that procurement controversy, including $50 million of undelivered children's Tylenol. Why were those companies being considered in the first place?
Well, his company in particular lost the bid, and it was a different company that won. So whatever they did after the fact to get ownership shares, I don't know what happens in the machinations of business, but we chose a company that was a proven provider, which is ASG. I invite you to go down to their clinic in Edmonton and see how they operate. It's a pretty incredible operation where they've been able to do about 4,000 surgeries for us per year. They have been in operation because we've been waiting for Enoch to continue building their facility. Enoch's facility still is going to be another year, and so we had to make a choice of, are we going to extend that contract while we're waiting for Enoch to build? And the answer is yes. They're just, everyone we talked to who's had an experience there, it's very positive. We looked at how at the prices that they charge, and taxpayers are saving up to $10,000 on a surgery for the more complex ones for knees and hips. So it's good quality. It's cost effective. And so what the minister said is, well, you know what? If this model works in Edmonton, let's let any surgical center have the exact same terms, same price, same terms. And his intention now is to do the same thing for the rest of the province. We need to have transparent prices. We need to have the same price for the same procedure at different clinics. And we need to be able to have businesses that will compete for that. We shouldn't, the way AHS did the procurement was very odd. They had a different price at every clinic for different procedures, different additional riders, different costs, for different prices for overnight stays, different payments for different things. And we just thought we need to standardize this and make it transparent. So that's why.
Minister Jones had clarified that Alberta Health Services canceled those negotiations on November 28th. Like those were ongoing up until recently.
Yeah.
That wasn't that long.
One of the issues was that for some reason, these particular contracts had a 15-year time horizon in. We've never signed 15-year contracts before. So I have no idea why the previous CEO decided to sign a 15-year contract, but she did. And so those were some of the things that we thought, why would we lock in today on a price that is going to be consistent for the next 15 years when we have all of this competition going on? So the same principle holds. We want to have the same price paid for the same procedure at different clinics, and we want it to be transparent. That's what activity-based funding is all about. And incidentally, that's how we want to start paying our hospitals too. Because what we've observed is that if you pay hospitals or you pay clinics for the surgeries that perform, you get a lot more surgeries. We've increased our number of surgeries at our charter centers by 50%. Meanwhile, the number of surgeries at our hospitals have just finally returned to pre-COVID eras, even though we're paying $3.5 billion more to AHS. So there's a problem with the model. And we're going to apply the model that we know works, and hopefully we'll get better performance out of our public hospitals too.
We talked to one of your health ministers, Adriana LaGrange, just a few episodes ago about this dual delivery approach to health, kind of a hybrid of public and private. How will you be evaluating the metrics on that? And worst case, if access to care doesn't improve for everybody, including folks without means, are you committing to walking it back?
Well, I hope that people will be able to hold us accountable based on some of the public portals that we're going to announce. We have a portal that is in the final stages now. I was hoping it was going to be released this week, but we're going to wait until the new year. But it shows the number of surgeries taking place right now in all of our public facilities. And it also shows what by type. So we'll be able to say how many surgeries did we do for knees and hips and Medicine Hat last year? And the answer will be, you got to do the same or more. And we'll make sure that we never see a decline in the number of surgeries that are performed in the public system. But I think what we have to understand is that the Alberta Health Services was gatekeeping in how they were managing their surgical blocks of time. I'll use Medicine Hat because I know that the surgeons down there are very upset. The surgical group only gets 6 days a month of operating room time. There are 2 top-of-the-line, beautiful operating rooms that have not been commissioned and are not in use. And that is a story that is taking place across the Alberta Health Services system, that we increase the capacity for them to perform surgeries, and then the management won't allow those operating rooms to be used to full capacity. So what we're hoping to do is to maintain the level of surgeries that we have in the public system, and then allow those surgeons to get additional blocks of time. And again, ASG is another example. I was told that there's 47 different surgeons who operate out of that facility. So they are doing some of their work in public hospitals, or doing some of their work at ASG. I suspect it would be very much the same.
Yeah, they're telling us that they have free time because the ORs aren't open to them at some of the hospitals, which I know is something
which is a staffing issue. I mean,
of course,
because this is just it. I'd encourage you to maybe do a follow-up story on Humber River. This is a public hospital in Ontario, and they came up with the secret formula, which is get 2 operating rooms out to the surgeon at the same time, so that then the surgeon goes into one operating room, does his work, and when he's done, he goes into the next one, and the patient's ready, and they go back and forth and back and forth. So rather than have 45 minutes of downtime between each surgery, that particular show was on CBC, they were able to do 14 surgeries in an 8-hour surgical time block. We normally only do 4. So this is a staff management issue. This is a resource management issue. We absolutely could do more surgeries, and we're going to incentivize that to happen. I think people are demanding it, and I think AHS is going to deliver.
Okay, a couple more questions before we're out of time. I recently talked to Corb Lund, country music star, who, as you know, is initiating a petition to stop coal mining in the eastern slopes. Polling shows, regardless of voting record, regardless of party support, that a huge majority of Albertans do not want to see any coal mining or further exploration in that region. Why is it continuing?
Well, because there were 4 advanced projects, and one of them was grassy. There was another that was Tent Mountain, and then there were 2 up north. And the 2 up north, Valero being one, they're going to be using underground mining techniques. There's another one in Grand Cache that doesn't seem to have a lot of controversy around it. Grassy Mountain, I noticed that the proponents are doing a lot of advertising in town halls on that. And Tent Mountain isn't going to go ahead. My understanding is that they're going to do pump storage with the Pecani and wind turbines in that one. So it's really only those 3 advanced projects that we're talking about. And as I mentioned, 2 up north don't seem to have much controversy around them. So it's Grassy Mountain. And so they've got to continue to make the case to the public. But what we did do is, because remember, all of this began under an NDP energy minister who signaled to Australian investors that she was open to allowing more coal development. And so there's been freehold coal leases, as well as leases that are owned by the province that we've had to buy back so that we can avoid $13 billion worth of lawsuits.
Saying, though, it sounds like that's what the people want.
But that's just it. I mean, I don't know what Corbett should take yes for an answer. We've got back into public hands 30,000 hectares of leases that will never be developed if Albertans don't want them to be. But that's the process that you have to go through, because people have to remember a lot of the coal leases were freehold, because that's just the way our province developed. I know they think that because we own so much of the oil and gas, we also owned the coal, but we didn't. In most cases, because that was offered to the railway companies as they were coming through, it's been in private hands. So when you expropriate private property, you got to pay for it. That's one of the principles that we have. So we've been working through those. We've managed to get 30,000 hectares back into government hands, and we'll keep on working with some of the other companies to see if we can get more.
Alberta's Information and Privacy Commissioner is launching 4 inquiries into your government's refusal to release results of the Alberta Next surveys. Why won't you release the results?
Well, does Ipsos release its results partway through their survey? No one does that. So we're almost done, and when we're done, and my anticipation is we'll have the Alberta Next results out by the end of the year, we'll release all of those survey results as well, because they came in from a lot of places. There was polling, there was online surveys, there was in person, and so all of that had to be collated, but you'll see it before the end of the year.
Okay, we asked Real Talkers for questions to talk at RyanJesperson.com, received a ton. I wanted to wrap with this one from Allison. It's a personal one. She says, how do you square the notion of parental rights with your move to entirely override them, specific to banning puberty blockers as a medical treatment for youth under 18, or under 16 rather, who are suffering through gender dysphoria? That's from Allison.
Well, we don't do medical experiments on children. We just don't do it. And
doctors would say it's not experimental.
Well, I can tell you the CAS report has said it is experimental. Sweden and Finland and Norway have said it's experimental. New Zealand has said it's experimental. The Americans have said it's experimental. And so the only person who should decide whether issues that are going to affect their fertility is the person themselves. No one can make that decision for them. So we want to make sure that kids get to of an age that they understand the implications of removing body parts that will allow them to have kids one day. And I don't think that you can do that at 10.
Right,
but you can do that when you're a little bit older.
She's asking about puberty blockers, not reassignment surgery.
Well, just look at what happens when a child gets on puberty blockers. They often do not come off them again. They go straight onto cross-sex hormones and then straight on to surgery. So you're starting a pathway at as young as 10 or 11 years old that leads to not having children one day. So I would say that that's a pretty important decision for a child to make themselves. And I think we recognize kids can't decide to drink or smoke or gamble or sign contracts when they're under the age of 18. So we're allowing them to start making those decisions at age 16, but certainly not any younger than that. We just don't think that that's, we've seen too many stories of lawsuits that have occurred with young people saying, why did they let me do this at such a young age? I was just a kid. And so we're protecting those kids so that they can make their own choices.
Premier Danielle Smith joining us in our feature interview presented by Mercedes-Benz Edmonton West. Thank you for doing this. We appreciate your availability.
We'll see you again in the new year.
Yeah,
Merry Christmas.
You bet. To you as well. This interview happens with the support of our friends at California Closets. We'll get to more of your comments on that Real Talk live chat powered by Park Power, obviously humming right now. California Closets, proudly Canadian owned and operated. As a matter of fact, manufacturing everything that they install right here in our home province of Alberta. This is a perfect time of year to request a free consultation. Maybe gift it. A lunch out and a consultation with your loved one, your life partner, your soulmate, and a California Closets designer who can talk to you about the magic they can work. And they can work with any budget. Take a look at their website, californiaclosets.ca, for more on these guaranteed for life, game-changing installations. Request your free consultation today. You know, it's not the time of year that most people are thinking about solar, but did you know that advancements in solar mean that even through the throes of winter, solar panels are performing? As a matter of fact, cold weather can actually help panels perform better than average. Nobody knows it better than the electricians and engineers at Solar by Kubi, providing innovative solar solutions for every home and business. Celebrating 10 years this year, they're closing in on 6,000 installations, making them one of the busiest in Western Canada. Solar quotes are always free. It's a great time to get that out of the way so they can be up on your roof come spring. Learn more at kubi.ca. That's KUBY.ca. Our friends at North Road Investment Council know that this is the time of year, December, where we're focusing our attention on the importance of giving, not just within your family, but gifts for charities and causes that are important to you. If you're a charitable person, you may not be taking advantage of something pretty major. Instead of giving cash to the causes you care about, consider donating appreciated investments, things like stocks or ETFs, mutual funds that have grown in value. In many cases, the capital gains tax on those appreciated securities is totally exempt when they're directly donated. That means more of your money is going to the charity, less to CRA. Plus, there's generous federal and provincial tax credits, strong corporate tax deductions. The team at North Road Investment Council can help you sort all this out. Make the most of those rules so you can further your generosity. Connect with Marshall Carey and their team at northroadic.com. Our friends at the Edmonton Chamber of Commerce, very encouraged by that MOU with the Prime Minister, Alberta's agreement. Looking forward to the investment's impact on the city. You better believe that Chamber members will be talking about that at the annual Chamber Ball. That's coming up next month. I'm thrilled to be returning as host on the 24th of January at Chamber Ball 2026. This is the black tie business event of the year. An unforgettable evening celebrating, get this, 137 years of serving Edmonton's business community. Chamber Ball 2026 will honor that legacy of excellence while looking forward toward the future we're building together. Learn more about membership and get your Chamber Ball tickets today at edmontonchamber.com. And the 12 days of Christmas are officially underway. Our friends at Friesen Brothers marking that all the way through the next 11 days through till December 19th. You can check out all the special treats online at friesen.com, or of course, just pop into a local Friesen Brothers with 16 locations across Alberta. They'll feature one specially priced Christmas favorite every single day. Festive treats, classic ingredients, seasonal essentials. Every offer is available for just one day only, making it the perfect opportunity to discover something new and add a little extra joy to your Christmas prep. You can look ahead. There's an advent calendar online. See what's coming up through the 12 days of Christmas on their website. That's friesen.com. Well, if you just missed it in our feature interview of the day, presented by Mercedes-Benz Edmonton West, Alberta's Premier Danielle Smith joining us live in studio. I want to jump into our live chat powered by Park Power. I know there's a lot going on, and we want to thank those of you that took the time to submit questions for the Premier. Obviously, a lot that we want to get to. Of particular interest, the Premier saying in this interview on the record that she is not entertaining an early election. I know a lot of folks figure that Albertans could be going back to the polls in 2026, maybe on the heels of an independence referendum. Of course, we've heard from politicians before. I remember our conversation, Johnny, that interview with Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, where we asked him about his intention with an upcoming federal election, whether or not he would lead the Liberals into that. And he said definitively, yes, he would. And then guess what? No, he didn't. So when it comes to politics, things can change, of course. But I thought that was particularly interesting, and also interesting to hear from the horse's mouth, straight from the source, what it was like to be booed at the outset of that UCP AGM with that pipeline agreement in hand. She seems to be taking it in steady fashion, says that some of those party members, in particular the separatists, need to be convinced that Canada can work. I mean, what else is she going to say publicly?
Sure.
But I thought that was a pretty remarkable development. You know, when it comes to the state of the party, when it comes to membership that's either united or split, that's going to be a story that'll play out over the next year or so for sure.
Sure, but we've heard a clear answer now. We heard it at the AGM, and then you asked her directly. We've heard it now that she believes in a unified Canada, you know, that's strong together. So if there's a referendum, we know how the Premier is going to vote, Ryan.
Yeah, well, I mean, you would think so. I mean, the question is, pretty straightforward. Do you agree that Alberta should remain in Canada? And you heard her say it here on the show. She said yes, without a qualifier. There was none of that sovereign Alberta within a united Canada phrasing.
Yeah,
she said yes, she agrees that Alberta should remain in Canada. You wonder now, will she pay a political price for that, or continue to face? We mentioned Jeff Rath from the Alberta Prosperity Project calling for her resignation. There's recall campaigns now targeting 17 UCP MLAs plus one NDP MLA, and rumblings that the Premier could be facing that, of course, as well in her home riding of Brooks Medicine Hat. That's another story. Again, guys, there's a million questions for sure we could get to, and we do our best in the 20 minutes we have. We actually went a few minutes overtime. Nia, in our live chat, powered by Park Power, your friendly local utilities provider, says, well, I mean, this government, or Alberta, barely holds oil and gas accountable to clean up their messes, so why would we do anything when it comes to foreign companies and coal? If you missed that Corblund interview, check it out. It was, I guess it was within the last 2 weeks. We talked to him and Elizabeth May, separate interviews, but in the same conversation. Interesting position Elizabeth May finds herself in, supporting that Liberal budget, and then now, of course, seeing some of her party's priorities really rolled back. So that's a story, of course, that continues, one that we're keeping an eye on. A lot of the kind of blame game through the interview, the courts referencing Justin Trudeau, coal mining referencing Shannon Phillips in the NDP. It's classic political tactics, political strategy. What most people care about is, what is this government doing right now? You don't want to hear governments making excuses based on predecessors. At the same time, there are some realities, and interesting to see. She says, well, I figure Corb should take yes for an answer. I would imagine that we'll talk to Corblund again as his petition gains momentum or starts to pick up steam, and that'll be an interesting one to hear him respond to. A lot of you sharing your comments in the chat on what you think may happen if Albertans were to go to the polls right now, and what that might look like. Leslie, just in all caps, says, listen to our Canadian doctors. There really is hesitation to I think, put faith in the courts, to put faith in medical professionals, at least in certain contexts, and that's no surprise. The Premier sticking to her guns on a couple of things. And I know that we didn't get a really clear answer, despite follow-up on the story of those surgical centers, those proposed charter surgical facilities in Red Deer and Lethbridge. A lot of that stuff is still in flux, and there's a lot of stuff still happening behind the scenes with that procurement controversy. Not to mention legal action that continues behind the scenes, and we don't have any insight into what's happening there with AHS former CEO Athana Mantzalopoulos. But that's also something to consider when we're asking questions of Premier and what she's going to be willing to talk about, for sure. Obviously, there's a lot of people that are tuning in, I think, to voice their displeasure with what this government is doing. Interesting to hear the Premier say that, she believes that the majority of people, she said it right at the outset of the interview, the majority of people are supportive of what she's doing. It depends on who you're talking to, who you're hearing from, probably where you're talking to them. Obviously, there's huge support for the Premier in some ridings or, within some groups. And then obviously, as is the case with politics, it was the same thing for Rachel Notley. It was the same thing for Stephen Harper and Justin Trudeau. It doesn't matter what party you're from. You're going to have your detractors that obviously don't have faith in what you're doing and believe that you're taking the province or the country down a road to ruin. Christie is cynical about the Alberta Next panel results, says, they're just not done yet manipulating the numbers. I know a lot of people are going to be curious to see the results that come out of that. That was basically a traveling road show that took a lot of effort, took a lot of funding. It took a lot of the Premier and Minister's attention. And I know that many of you attended those Alberta Next panels because you let us know to talk at ryanjesperson.com what you were seeing there, what you were hearing there, or your motivation for going there. Super Chat Ken says that was an old Danielle Smith trick. Conflate something reasonable, like not permitting surgeries, gender reassignment surgeries he's talking about, with not permitting puberty blockers. Says, and she's purposely avoiding including their parents' rights here. I think that was from Allison, wasn't it? That was a good and direct question from Allison, and we appreciate it. I want to give a shout out to many of you that wrote in your questions. We do as many as we can to either work them into the questions we're asking Premier, or at least to include them in the show. Gorma wrote in to talk at ryanjesperson.com, says, if I had an opportunity to ask a question to Premier, I would wonder how she can seriously claim not to be a separatist as leader of a separatist party when they're facilitating hoops to allow an unconstitutional separatist question the courts have ruled is unconstitutional with that omnibus Bill 14. That's the bill that we referenced with her, bypassing the courts, spending provincial tax money to coddle separatists. Gormit says that, of course, feel free to put your professional voice into reworking the question. And also, thank you for hosting the best show on the internet, Gorma. Thank you for that. Yeah, I mean, she gave us her response to it. I don't know. I mean, people will say, well, there's words and then there's actions, right? But the Premier, in talking about that separatist faction of the party, which I do believe is a real issue for her, a real problem, and I think it will remain a problem, and it's probably a growing problem. She's not going to spell it out here on a talk show, but I would imagine that that is something that consumes a considerable amount of her effort and strategy, at least her team's effort and strategy on how to keep that faction of the party from breaking away. If you look at some of the early legislation, some of the early moves that the province has made, including invoking the notwithstanding clause, that's something I would have liked to have more time to ask about. I mean, what's the criteria for invoking the notwithstanding clause? If the government now is just going to utilize that as a regular tool in the toolbox, as some of you have written into the show, to so-called normalize it, how do you justify it, and how does it become anything other than something that is defining your government? The notwithstanding clause, of course, the spirit of it. She talks a lot about the spirit of the law. She talked a lot about her thoughts on the judiciary and how she believed that they were not ruling under the spirit of the law. Well, the spirit of the notwithstanding clause is not designed to be carte blanche to be invoked again and again and again and again by a government to protect legislation from the courts or to protect legislation from challenge. So that's an interesting one. A lot of people are saying Premier would not have won, and this is speculative, obviously, but the leadership of this party, thus becoming Premier, and then won an election relatively shortly after without the support of the socially conservative folks, the so-called right wing, the religious faction, the separatist faction, previously, to generally speak, what would have generally composed the Wild Rose Party. And as Jason Kenney, 2017, it's 2018, and then ultimately winning that election in 2019 unites those two conservative parties, the Progressive Conservatives and the Wild Rose Party, and won government in convincing fashion. As a matter of fact, the first party to ever secure more than 1 million votes in an Alberta election. But if you lose that faction, and if it gets to the point where either they come for the leader to keep that party intact and then risk losing membership from the middle of the road conservatives, the so-called progressive conservatives, however many or few there may be in that party, then you've got real problems. And if you lose the support of those that are supporting Alberta separatism, some polling has it between 20 and 30% of Albertans, but over 50% of the UCP membership, then what does the future of the party look like? Of course, to have a legitimate conversation about this, you also have to talk about, the effective nature or not of Naheed Nenshi's leadership, the effective opposition or not of Alberta's official opposition, the NDP. So that all has to be part of that conversation. But certainly a conversation that's not going away anytime soon. You saw that. It was November 28th that UCP AGM started in our home city of Edmonton, in the Metro Edmonton region. And obviously that's something that will continue to be our focus and the focus of people that are paying attention across the country to where Alberta is going with this. Gilles says, so the Premier should also then believe that political parties should not be able to have events for people under 18. Gilles touching on the idea they can't drink, they can't smoke, they can't vote, and, to a certain degree, they can't make decisions on their own medical future. Gilles says, so no more 15 to 25-year-old UCP dance parties. Alberta girl wondering, did she have to use the notwithstanding clause like Kleenex? Others of you clearly frustrated on this. Chris, meantime, says many are accusing the Premier of not being a doctor while they're pretending to know the same facts when it comes to some of these issues that are facing trans youth. Tommy Temper just chiming in to say, I love the Premier, and thanks to her for doing this interview. Meantime, Pat says the interview was disgusting. I hope the interview wasn't disgusting. You may have not got what you wanted out of it. M. Aitken wondering, no question about why they stopped debate yesterday in the legislature. She wonders, what the fuck, Ryan? Sure. If we had 45 minutes, I mean, it's, again, I don't want to spend too much time talking about the approach to an interview, but if you want to get to a reasonable number of different subjects, you can only do so much in follow-up or only focus so much on certain things. We spent a lot of time talking about healthcare in this interview, probably 5 or 6 minutes, which in the grand scheme, if you're out having coffee with somebody or over a beer, 5 minutes isn't that long. But when you got 20 minutes, that's a lot, right? So we do our best, and it's okay to disagree with the approach that we took on that. Interviews are a little bit like bucking broncos too, right? Like once they roll, you never know where they're going to go or where they're going to wind up. But a fair question, Emma, on limiting debate. 2012, Danielle Smith would have taken huge issue with that. As a matter of fact, you don't have to look very far on YouTube or otherwise to find video evidence of the premier in opposition then as Wild Rose Party leader, chastising the progressive conservative government for limiting debate, for ramming through legislation. But almost everybody's different in government than they were in opposition. Almost everybody. And it's much easier to oppose than govern. And when you have a majority government, though they would never put it this way, you can, quite frankly, do whatever it is that you want. And if you have a legislative agenda, and if you have stakeholders, or if you're looking to pay out those pounds of flesh, as Smith's former infrastructure minister, Peter Guthrie, put it on this show just a few episodes ago, make sure you check that episode out, then you're going to roll through more quickly in faster fashion than a lot of people, including those that oppose your legislation, would appreciate. Maxine was watching us live on Facebook. Thanks, Maxine, for that. In our live stream presented by California Closet, she says nobody is doing gender reassignment surgery right now on youth, and that's correct. She says, what are you talking about, Premier? Please educate yourself when making these decisions. I don't personally think that the Premier thinks that gender reassignment surgery is happening, and I don't think that, well, as a matter of fact, I'll take that back, because I do think that a lot of the people that are barking about it on social media, the loudest voices that you see on social media in support of the government's legislation and use of the notwithstanding clause, I do think a lot of those people believe that gender reassignment surgery is happening on young people, because some of the comments I see are ridiculous. They're egregious comments. To be crude, I'm assuming that there's not a lot of young kids watching this interview right now, but if they are, this is a great time to mute it for 10 seconds. But how many of us, and I bet it's the majority of us, have seen comments on Facebook or other social media sites that 6-year-olds are having their penises chopped off, because their teachers are trying to turn them trans? I do think that there are some people that believe that that sort of thing is happening, but it's not. There are some breast reduction surgeries, as an example, that happen with young people under the age of 18 in Alberta. Most of those, if not all of them, and we're talking like a handful, like approximately a dozen per year for medical reasons, like back pain, or in other words, none of your business, on the advice of doctors and surgeons and medical professionals that have been in school for 20 years. We heard a message, I read the email probably a couple of weeks ago from a real talker who had who had taken puberty blockers through her youth, had nothing to do with gender dysphoria, had nothing to do with how she's wired or how she sees herself or who she is, and everything to do with her inner biology on the advice of a doctor. And she wrote an impassioned plea on that. It's so very interesting that so many people anecdotally believe very strongly in the power of the person, the individual, that idea of libertarianism, of small government, of butting out of people's lives. Yet when it comes to other people's medical treatment, they strongly believe that it's absolutely their business. And that's something that I've never, ever been able to figure out. How about this from Super Chat Ken? Thanks for the $5. He says, great interview. He says, remember, everybody, look for and sign that Corb Lund petition. Make the province, quote, change the law yet again. Les wonders, why give her a 25-minute spot to spew her? Really? She's the premier, man. Erica says, I disagree with the premier on quite a few things, but the level of rage and angst that I'm seeing in the live chat today is concerning. She says some of you should probably take a little break for your own health. I would say this. People, and I don't blame people for this, get all fired up when politics hits home for them, when politics gets personal. And for a lot of people, we saw this in our episode yesterday, Johnny, sort of a back and forth that you and I thought, well, I won't speak for you, but a back and forth that I thought was relatively benign. I didn't think that we said anything outrageous, talking about how that teacher's strike ended. When the government invoked, that was Bill 2, the back-to-school legislation, the notwithstanding clause ordering teachers back to work, imposing a 4-year agreement. And we made a comment basically on the spirit of the comment was that teachers had returned to the classroom as professionals and were doing their best amid stress, amid feeling disrespected, amid feeling disheartened, and were doing their best in front of the kids to do their jobs. To answer their calling. Teaching is so much more than just a job, and people were fired up about it, but that's just personal for people. I don't blame them.
Yeah, that was my comment. I said they bounced back as you were speaking, but what I meant was that they were just, doing what they're supposed to do, which is their job. I didn't mean that everything is hunky-dory. I was the one questioning how the morale would be, if you remember on our show, when they were all forced to go back to work, because I thought, if I was on strike and was forced to go back to work, no matter which job I had, I think I'd be, dragging my heels to get in there. But credit to the teachers, because this is why teachers are one of the most amazing professions on the planet. They all went back and did their job. Does that mean that inside their spirits are high, that they're not thinking about this every waking minute when they're at work? Of course not. What I meant is they got up in the morning, they put on their shoes, they put on their pants one leg at a time, and they went and did their job, which is what they do. And way before this, I thought it was crazy that people were like jumping on me about it, because I am all for the teachers. I have been saying for almost since this show began and I was here.
You'd be hard pressed to find somebody that's had the teachers back more than you have.
They are underpaid. They are babysitters. They are, raising your kids for the most part until they're about 17 years old. And there's no way to really argue against that. And in regards to the gender reassignment and all that, I parents, I'll talk to you directly. Your kids are safe. Puberty blockers, no matter how many videos you watch on YouTube, for the most part can be reversed into your late 20s. It's not something that's permanent. And gender reassignment surgery worldwide, I've looked numbers up. I've looked at studies from Yale and from Fraser Institute here, and I've looked everywhere to see where teens are getting gender reassignment surgery globally, anywhere. Even in Thailand, probably regarded as, I don't want to say the best, but they've been doing gender reassignment surgery for decades before any other country. Even there, it's 18 plus. They have laws in place. There are no children getting gender reassignment surgeries. Your kids are safe.
Yeah, and that's another example of how politics is personal. And you can take your pick. For Cor Blunt, politics is now personal because of his family's ranching background and how he feels about Alberta's environment moving forward. For a lot of conservatives, coal will become an issue. That's the burr under their saddle, so to speak. And for many folks, it's different. And Nicole is watching us live on Facebook right now in response to, I think it was Erica's comment that the chat was, what did she say? She didn't say unhinged, but she said basically it's like super passionate. Nicole says, we'd love to take a break for our health. Unfortunately, thanks to this government, we can't do anything for our health since they're actively destroying our healthcare system. I mean, there's big changes coming. Healthcare reform is going to be a significant one. This will be about 900 days after Smith promised to fix healthcare within 100 days. Graham's watching, says libertarian is opposition, but authoritarian is government. Says the only liberty Alberta has now is the liberty that the UCP is taking on overriding the rights we used to have. For Graham, that I would imagine a comment, relating to the notwithstanding clause. Mark is wondering, since when in Alberta does the Premier, not the regulator, decide which energy or coal projects proceed? The issue arises, as landowners in the public can start ignoring these energy issues. Others are saying that the Premier will not survive our next leadership review. We'll see. It all depends on deliverables, right? That's typically what leads to a Premier's rise or fall. That or they just lose the confidence of caucus, or they lose the confidence of the membership. I mean, Ralph Klein, Ed Stelmach, you can go back and learn from what conservative premiers have seen in past. MetaModern says what the premier is saying means very little. Words mean nothing. She says she could get on some right-wing podcast and say the exact opposite thing tomorrow. I mean, to MetaModern, I would say there's value in having premier on record, regardless of where it is. And obviously, these conversations continue. Dwayne says if the premier truly believes in a unified Canada, then why is a certain percentage of her cabinet and staff separatists? Dwayne says Rob Anderson is a co-author of the Free Alberta Strategy. That's true. I mean, Rob, I believe his title is Executive Director of the Premier's Office. Former colleague of Danielle Smith, was a Wild Rose MLA back in the day. I mean, he doesn't hide it. His Twitter handle is Free Alberta Rob. I guess you could read into that a couple of different ways, but Dwayne's not wrong on that. When he talks about a certain percentage of cabinet that is separatist, nobody knows, which I think is why some people are very intrigued at the option of this going to a free vote in the legislature. Now that there's a legislative process that's been triggered, if you want to kind of learn the minutia of it or better understand it, if you're not quite certain on what it means for that Forever Canadian petition and it, just under 440,000 signatures to be verified by Elections Alberta, which happened about a week ago. We did talk to Thomas Lukaszuk about it last week, and he gets into it. You can hear more about it. But an option that is there is for MLAs to go with a free vote. A lot of people would like to see each one of them on the record know where everybody stands. I can imagine why the Premier, that would be the last thing she might want. Corradetti Motorsports says, what a mess. This government's been a slow-moving train wreck. We have so many pressing issues to deal with, and look at the garbage that we're all grappling with now. It just feels like a big waste of time. Denis is wondering how much more will our electricity rates go up when AI data centers increase demand. Denis, that's something we could have dialed in on. We'll ask her maybe next chance we have to welcome her to our historic Mercer Warehouse studio.
Park Power.
What's the Park Power one? Oh, are you talking about data centers?
Anytime we talk about electricity rates, I'm just going to Park Power.
You are a big backer of Park Power now that you've officially started saving, what, $56 a month?
I can't believe you could save this much on internet right now. It's insane.
This one's for free, by the way. That was just organic. That's just Johnny. Anytime Johnny hears electricity, he feels that 56 extra bucks a month in his pocket.
Looking to save money.
Yeah. Vamp Fashion says, damn it all, the petition only gets a recall vote. Only if that passes, then a by-election would be called. Recall doesn't just hand the seat to the NDP. There's kind of a back and forth going on among real talkers. Man, I want to credit you guys, regardless of where you come at this from, as long as you're respectful. We sure appreciate seeing debate in this chat. I can tell you, and someone here says, Smith could go on a right-wing podcast and say the exact opposite thing tomorrow. I'm grateful that this is a talk show that attracts guests and audience members across the political spectrum so we can have real conversations, and to see healthy and vigorous debate in our live chat means a lot. Now, there's some of the comments in there that I would prefer to not see. Credit to Johnny, who, despite everything else on his plate, flying the plane every single show, does his best to moderate that chat. But for the most part, people have been keeping it civil today, and I appreciate that very much. Mark goes on to say, by the way, Corblunt's cool, but he's not a lawyer. Says, you got to get Professor Emeritus Nigel Banks back on the show, somebody who knows the law, to talk about coal mining and other approvals and outright interference with the Alberta energy regulator from government. Randy says, I've decided to vote for the NDP next election, but I've also decided to help the new Progressive Conservative Party in any way I can. That Bill 14 limiting what political parties can call themselves, including other parties using the word conservative, which is really interesting. We'll see where that goes. You are a gift to the world. What a great handle in our live chat. Says, what Canadian dismisses a court ruling as being out of the court to be out of their jurisdiction, right? If the ruling had gone her way, she would have no doubt applauded that decision. I mean, that's typically the way it goes, isn't it? 100%. Let us know what you think on this to talk at ryanjesperson.com. Just Joe is watching us, says, you know what? I'm actually not right-wing or left-wing. I'm for respecting what the people want, not authoritarian dictatorship. Huh. Joe Blow says, how many big issues are going forward that they didn't campaign on or that we have overwhelmingly said no to? The Alberta pension plan, provincial police, It just seems like the Premier just doesn't care. Keep the comments coming. Chantel says, I really like Peter Guthrie's move to continue to call them the Wild Rose Party because they are. Now, of course, Peter has, I won't say ulterior motives. His motives are clear. He wants to revive the progressive conservatives. He wants those that are feeling, in his words, politically homeless. As a matter of fact, I think it was his colleague, fellow independent MLA Scott Sinclair, in that exclusive with us last week that talked about the politically homeless in Alberta. But of course they want to present the UCP as the Wild Rose. Of course they want people to believe that the only progressive conservative option is the option that they're presenting. Interesting insights. If you missed that interview, check it out on the future of the Alberta Party and how this is all playing out, including the two of them, Sinclair and Guthrie, being personally sued. It's a pretty wild situation. I didn't even bring that up. When the Premier says, what did she say to me out of the gate? She basically said, well, why do you think this is one of the craziest times in Alberta's life? I didn't even mention the fact that two of her former MLAs are being personally sued by her party.
Let me go down the list, Madam Premier. By the way, can't say progressive conservatives, right?
Yeah.
Can't
that's
say
right. No, I don't know if the legislation's passed yet, so I think I can still get away with saying it. Before we go any further, every Tuesday we're really proud of this partnership. The Royal Alexandra Hospital, in basically Edmonton's core, has been serving Albertans and beyond. Like, I'm talking Western Canadians. For well over a century, for 125 years. And every Tuesday for the next number of months, we're celebrating the impact of those 125 years with Echoes of the Alex. These are the stories over a century and a quarter that have defined this legacy of care. Feels fitting today to talk about a woman who shaped this province in ways that are still being felt today, a woman whose leadership began not in government, but in the earliest days of caregiving in the province. We're rewinding way back. This is one of the very first Echoes of the Alex. Long before the Royal Alexandra Hospital even existed, before there were emergency rooms, before maternity wards. This is before Edmonton was even a city. There was nurse Eliza Newton. Now, Johnny, this was so long ago that we don't even have a photo of Nurse Eliza Newton.
We have photo of the time,
and we've looked everywhere. But look at this. Look at this artwork that we're showing. If you're watching us on YouTube, you can be sure to check this out or on any of our social media platforms.
Artist rendering.
Yeah, Nurse Newton arrived in the late 1800s. She was Alberta's first ever formally trained nurse, bringing professional knowledge, compassion, and those Nightingale principles to a frontier community that desperately needed them. Eliza's hospital was a simple home northeast of town. We're showing it there, known as the Hermitage. And from that little house, she was caring for women in childbirth. She was treating sick children, tending to families that were scattered across the river valley. This is before Alberta was even a province. She was walking muddy trails, traveling in harsh winters. She nursed wherever she was needed, in her own living room, in farmhouses, in makeshift shacks. This is incredible stuff. She went because people needed care, and there was literally no one else that could provide it. Nurse Eliza Newton's work predated the Royal Alex by more than a decade, yet her spirit is woven into its very foundation. She represents the beginning of a lineage of women whose leadership shaped healthcare in Alberta long before they were recognized as leaders. And her compassion is one of the very first echoes that still resonates through this hospital 125 years later. As we celebrate that legacy this holiday season, there are two meaningful ways that you can support the Royal Alexandra Hospital Foundation. Check out royalalex.org. I'm showing it to you right now. You can give the gift of history. Purchase their new 125-year history book. This is a perfect holiday present for anybody that's connected to Edmonton or the Alex. Again, royalalex.org/125 years, 125 years. Or you can make a donation in honor of someone you love. This is a gift that carries impact long after the holidays. And you can check out givetoroyalalex.org for that. You'll be helping to ensure stories like Nurse Eliza Newton's and the thousands that followed continue to echo forward for generations. This is Echoes of the Alex, proudly presented by the Royal Alexandra Hospital Foundation. Learn more at royalalex.org. Joker says Canada's got to fight 2 battles right now. That's pretty sad. I wonder if that's a reference to what's happening in Quebec right now as well. We talked to different political commentators, of course, through the week, Supriya Dwivedi every single week, and this recurring theme of referenda, of plural referendums across the province, Johnny, in referenda
I don't know.
in Alberta and Quebec obviously has a lot of people, kind of wondering what the future of Canada is going to look like. If you could fast forward 5 years, what does it look like? Boom Shanker X says populism, unfortunately, will rise as economic conditions deteriorate. I think that history has proven that to be an astute prediction. And again, this all connects back to that assertion that all politics is personal. For people that are struggling right now, you think of, for example, coal mining families that would be concerned about the future of their industry in the Crow's Nest Pass or in those eastern slopes areas, then the politics of coal is going to be very personal to them in a different way that farmers or ranchers might feel about it. For families with a young person, with a trans youth or a young person that's struggling to understand or learning more about their gender identity and the like, then that politics is going to be personal. For somebody that's involved, in a retirement situation or a fixed income situation, and so their involvement with politics is the future of pension plans, then that's going to be very personal to them, especially when they'll see speculation or hear speculation on shows like this from investment experts, as an example, that will say that they have concerns about an Alberta pension plan and then what that could look like or what that might mean or the types of projects that it might fund. I've seen a ton of comments from you today on an Alberta pension plan and the connection that it could have to funding a new pipeline. Sneezies is wondering, why are people so concerned about other people's kids? Like, mind your own damn business. Dwayne says Danielle Smith has long-standing socially liberal beliefs. Why is she contradicting herself? Some of you are criticizing the left side of this audience. Some of you are criticizing the right side of this audience. RS says using the term communism in a casual way is such an insult to those who have lived under actual communist regimes. We've said the same thing about the way that the word fascism or the word Nazi is just flippantly thrown around right now. Bunny Slipper says that interview wasn't real talk. It was how to not answer questions hour.
Well, I mean, if I don't want to say she doesn't always answer questions, but you're like, she's one of the most verbally, technical. If you get in a ring with Danielle, have you ever seen her not answer a question to the letter and then flip it? I mean, that is literally her past, was in radio and verbiage, and that's what she does.
And I just think that, at any point she is answering the questions. You just don't like
yeah.
how she's answering the questions. Yeah. The one question that, even with circle back, that she wasn't touching was the Sam Raish thing. I'm not surprised at all by that. That's an active situation. I didn't expect a candid response to that, but I'm still going to ask the question, regardless of whether or not you're going to get an answer to it. Damn it all says, if none of this is happening, why is everybody also worried about the laws that can make it happen? Gilles says, regarding teachers turning kids trans, we can't even get them to do homework or even show up to class.
That right there.
He says, but sure, teachers are all powerful.
We're going to send you a Real Talk mug. That is comment of the day.
Yeah, DW says the only sterilization on minors in Alberta, this is true, happened under the Socreds. It says Peter Lougheed abolished eugenics in 1971. Yeah, that's a dark part of Alberta's history. I mean, everybody's got dark and brutal history. That's part of Alberta's history for sure. Metamodern says it's funny how there's no uproar about puberty blockers or gender-affirming care except for when it comes to trans people. And it turns out a lot of these critics are just bigots. Denise says Alberta's on its way to restricting abortion rights and as a result, women's health care. I mean, you wonder where all this could go. And again, it's all political calculus, right? It's all a government determining where its support is coming from and how it can maintain that support and what it needs to do to feed the base. And every government does it. But in this government, the base, well, I think it's safe to say that there's not majority perspectives on a lot of the files that the government's touching right now. That's not to say all of them. Some of them are, and I know that some of you don't like when I point this out, but it's true. Polling shows that the majority of parents do believe, for example, that they should be notified if their child is identifying by a different pronoun or using a different name at school. The majority of parents do believe they should be notified there. I would imagine that the majority of folks do not believe, though, that the government's moving in the right direction on a lot of other similar files that were covered in that same bill. Let us know if you disagree to talk@ryanjesperson.com. A reminder that every week, final episode of every week, we give you a chance to absolutely sound off with your hottest takes. We pull from our hottest YouTube comments as well as emails to talk@ryanjesperson.com. That's the flamethrower presented by the DQs of Northwest Edmonton and Sherwood Park. You can fire up your flamethrower anytime to talk@ryanjesperson.com. Justin says, and thanks for your YouTube channel membership, Justin. He says, I don't think that we should just accept or dismiss the hypocrisy of being in opposition and then acting completely counter to your ideals or criticisms when in power. It belies a fundamental lack of character. Yeah, I definitely don't think you should just accept it or dismiss it. I'm just saying that it happens all the time. That doesn't mean it's okay. But a lot of times governments are, opposition is very critical. Leaders are very critical of something. And then all of a sudden when they're in government, don't make me start talking about property taxes. Don't make me start talking about income taxes. Don't make me start talking about all the promises that people make. And then they find themselves in government and realize it's not as easy as they said, right? We haven't even talked, by the way. It just feels like a bit of a random thing right now about the tale of two cities with property tax increases in our home province, in Calgary and Edmonton. Have you been following this story at all? Edmonton's coming in just under a 7% increase, 6.9.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
They're holding. I know that they don't want to say 7, but for all intents and purposes, it's 7%. Calgary's at 2. And I know that the new council in Edmonton's going to have to wear this one. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a tough situation. You're taxpayer in Edmonton looking down in Calgary and they're able to do it. Now I know people are going to write in about the different tax bases and Calgary's got the property tax advantage, and that's all true. We've talked about that on this show, but man, that's a tough look for Edmonton.
Huge, but it looks like Knack, a good friend of the show who comes in and talks to us all the time, wanted to rip that Band-Aid early. I would too.
I don't know if he had a choice.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Interesting comment here from an audience member in our live chat powered by Park Power. Says, whatever happened to confidentiality? Like what happens between a doctor and a patient should be confidential. Jesse says, thank you to Premier Smith for quoting the CASS study. That's CASS for people that want to Google it. Now, there is indisputable fact, says Jesse, that she doesn't understand puberty blockers. The CASS study is widely proven to be false.
That is true.
Tommy says the teachers got my kid to draw a rainbow on the sidewalk at recess. I found out.
Oh my God.
They push the agenda even at recess. Tommy, the rainbow, represents God's promise to mankind that there will never, ever again be another devastating flood that will wipe out the entire population. I believe in a separation of church and state, but if your kids are participating in Bible study by way of sidewalk chalk, I don't know if that's the worst thing in the world.
It's the conspiracy-covered sunglasses you wear around. And the clouds they drew beside them were puffs of drug smoke.
They were fairy dust.
Fairy dust. Methamphetamines.
Ben Demon Hunter says, it's simple, guys. Stay out of my life and my family's and my children's lives, like AKA government coercion, manipulation, and deception, etc. Pastors, teachers, bosses, or anyone who is abusing their positions of power. Chantel says, I am still pissed. And that's okay, Chantel. Says, I'm still pissed about the teachers being treated like shit. She says, I will not forget. And I hope that most others don't either. She says, these people are saints for dealing with kids all day, every day. The Premier could never. That from Chantel. Jill says, we don't talk enough about women's bodies and medical conditions, things that women experience all the time, unless it can be used politically. I think she's on to something there. Interesting comments. We got Supriya Dwivedi prompted by a question from Kyle in our live chat yesterday to talk about what's happening in Quebec with looking to enshrine women's health access into legislation, and Supriya laying out why that may not be best case scenario. Kind of an interesting discussion that happens, what was it, Johnny, about 30, 40 minutes into our most recent episode after we said goodbye to Sharon Carr. Interesting, Sharon and Supriya kind of getting into it, whether or not Canada has bowed to the bros by abandoning feminist foreign policy. Really good back and forth between those two. Make sure you check it out. Someone says they're low-key enjoying your troll jobs on your computer screen today. Take your wide shot. I haven't seen it. What do you have on your computer screen today? Is it supposed to be private and quiet?
Oh, I'm sorry. I was reading comments. What are we talking about?
Your troll job on your
Oh,
screen.
that's
What's on your
just
screen?
my favorite couple right now.
How did we not talk about this yesterday with
Well,
Supriya?
I got it lined up. I mean, it's well, for those listening who can't see, this is I wake up every day and I'm blow drying my hair, and in the back I've got a framed one of this at home in the bathroom, and I just
This is the former Prime Minister of Canada and one of the biggest pop stars in the world.
And you know, we joked about it and kind of trolled them before, saying maybe this was all for show, but this is getting really real right now.
Katy Perry has 202 million Instagram followers, and from Tokyo, Japan, she went Instagram official.
Yeah, so here's this. This is her first political soiree. There's the former Prime Minister of Japan and his wife with Justin Trudeau and Katy Perry. So this is not just a partying on yachts and getting yours and getting out, a fling. This isn't for TikTok. This isn't for the paparazzi. This looks to be a real relationship, no matter how you feel about it. Yeah.
Once it's Instagram official, that's kind of a thing, right? Check out this video. This is, we'll describe it for those on the podcast, but this is like sort of a selfie perspective. Looks like, what are they eating? I don't know if it's sushi or something else. Is she, eating sushi rolls. The way that they're looking at each other, this is triggering a lot of people. I saw Alex Pearson, who's a former colleague of mine. She's an AM talk radio host out in Ontario. Alex and I are decent enough friends, know each other reasonably well. And I saw that she retweeted a photo of Katy Perry and Justin Trudeau, and she simply said, "Go away." And then all the comments were from people saying, like, "He was off my timeline until you just put him back on there, Alex." We're trying to get him to go away, and you can't.
Look, I don't care how you feel about Justin Trudeau. That guy walked in the studio, and you could just see how, he could be an actor, or he's a
performer.
He oozes pop culture. When he came in, it was hard not to be enamored. He comes right up to you, and what's the first thing he says? "Let's get a selfie." He's that guy.
He knows what he's doing. I want to read this from Justin, who appreciate the critical comments. Justin says, overall, I'm just disappointed. The comment went away. He says, I'll read it, Justin. He says, the second part of it felt like you guys are skipping over the notwithstanding clause, or like brushing off the way that teachers were forced back. It's just like one thing or another. Justin says, talk shows, this is my paraphrase. This live chat is moving like crazy. Paraphrase, Justin says that there's not enough attention being paid to the use of the notwithstanding clause. And it's a fair comment. I mean, I think that we've talked about it a lot, and it's obviously troubling and concerning. I mean, the notwithstanding clause, what it does by definition is it suspends charter rights for certain groups for up to 5 years. So, like, it by definition is suspending people's rights. And you're right, and it deserves significant and scrutiny and critique. And I think that there has been on this show day after day after day after day, and we didn't spend a lot of time talking about it in this interview. And I'll take your point that we could have. I don't like getting in this position. This is kind of the peek behind the curtain thing. Johnny and I will talk after the show, and I'll say I probably shouldn't have spent so much time justifying what we asked her about, what we didn't. But I like you guys to have the peek behind the curtain. I like you to know or to understand what's going on between my ears. It's like you make a choice on what you're going to ask about, what you're going to talk about. The MOU is important stuff. The separation stuff is important stuff. The healthcare stuff is important stuff. Allison's question was really important stuff. Her comment on the judges as gatekeepers and losing faith in the judiciary, if a premier's on the record saying that's important stuff. It's all important stuff. I've told the story of when I asked the Prime Minister on my terrestrial radio show way back in the day, like 10 years ago. You remember the story when Canadians were supporting, saying you want to buy French's mustard because it was Canadian mustard. Do you remember that stupid thing like 10 years? Not stupid, but it was frivolous. But people were talking about ways to support Canada and buy Canadian. They were talking about French's mustard.
Yeah, of course.
And so the Prime Minister sits down and I say, what sort of mustard is in your fridge? And people just lost their minds. Like, why would you ask such a stupid question? Why would you waste such valuable time with the Prime Minister asking about mustard? I said, it's about more than just mustard, but no mustard questions here today.
He was trying to get the soundbite where he said, Grey Poupon. Of course.
That's right. That's right, exactly. KK says, no Smith supporter has given me a cogent answer as to why the Premier didn't call a public inquiry on the health scandal. Judge Wyant was very clear on how he was restricted and guardrailed. That's true. If you read the Wyant report, Judge Wyant has not absolved stakeholders, including government officials, of conflict of interest or of basically breaking procurement rules. The Wyant report stipulates that basically was stonewalled, that there was not cooperation. And so that's not absolution, to be clear. And that's a good point right there. Others of you are saying that, these people are going to be, are they talking about me or the politicians? They say two. It might be me and you, those two clowns. No, I think maybe they're talking about Guthrie and Sinclair. We're catching up on the chat here. Those two clowns are going to be gone in 2 years. They might be talking about Guthrie and Sinclair. We'll see about that. That was another fascinating part of that interview where Guthrie basically, I asked them if they're going to seek re-election or what their political future looks like, and both of them were like, Scott's like, this job isn't the be-all and end-all. Peter Guthrie calls it the worst job he's ever had. Pretty interesting. Check it out. Check out that interview if you haven't seen it already. Ms. KD says, I wish there was some mechanism to hold government to real account, not just elections. We've now been shown how much non-mandated damage can be done in 4 years. I mean, there is a mechanism to hold government to account, and in at least 18 ridings, in at least 18, that's like, I'm really bad at math, but like that's almost like 25%, not technically, it's closer to 20%. Of all the ridings, provincial ridings in Alberta, there's recall petitions and initiatives underway. Whether or not that's a good thing, Professor Dwayne Bratt was on our show a while ago with Janet Brown, easily, probably, well, I got to be careful how I put that, but certainly a very well-respected pollster in the province and across the country. Dwayne hates it. He hates recall legislation. He told us why. He says it takes complex stuff and it boils it down to yes-no questions. He doesn't like that form of direct democracy, but it is there, and it's been made easier by Jason Kenney and then Danielle Smith. And now you could probably argue that it's blowing up in their faces and they're having to find a way to wiggle out of it. Joker 1975 says Alberta has lost all of what it means to be conservative with a capital C. Joker, I'd be curious in follow-up, what defines conservatism to you? Others are saying there was nothing, not a petition that stopped Jeff Rath and the Alberta Prosperity Project. It was the fact that the question towards separation was unconstitutional, in particular in the context of treaties. That judge's ruling there. Man, there's a lot to go here. Alberta Girl says, I wish Jespo would have asked her how democracy can exist with this government's overreach, rewriting of the laws to protect their power. Her own words were that elected officials make up laws to suit them. I mean, she didn't say that. She didn't spell it out that way, but she did say that basically at the end of the day, they can rewrite the laws. And she's not wrong. Boyle Street Curse says it is, why is it the craziest political time in Alberta's history right now? Well, because they're flooding the zone. It's her. It's Premier. Man, I don't know. Subject matter here. There's just a lot to get to, Johnny. You're shaking your head. I feel like we could go for 3 hours. The streaming audience has remained here, and the conversations are continuing. It really says a lot to me. Aaron was watching the interview, says, to me, it's always about language and recognizing spin. Says Premier's not the only one who does it. It's a huge part of this game. However, she is Premier, so it's even more important to pay attention. I'd be curious to know if interviews like this land differently between people that are listening on the podcast and people that are watching on YouTube. I don't know. Body language factoring in. She's obviously a confident communicator. Miss Katie says, Jespo, you're going to give the UCP ideas. Whatever happened to that plan, they had to use random vans to transport people to hospitals. I think right now, and I'm not endorsing necessarily every bit of reform that this government's going to roll out on healthcare, but I do think it's fair to point out that the way that we've been doing it now is not working. That's for sure. That's undeniable. And I am open, and I've said it before, and I know some of you don't love this, I'm open to different solutions, to different approaches to addressing things like access to family doctors, access to essential surgeries, to hit on wait lists for all surgeries, including those elective surgeries. Remember, we heard from a surgeon that wrote into the show on condition of anonymity the other day that was saying, guys, there's a lot of talk about elective surgery. He says that doesn't mean they're not important or they're not necessary. They're not needed. It just means that they may not be life-saving surgeries. So that doesn't mean they're not needed. We need to address that. We need to figure things out, whether or not that's people being transported between hospitals and care centers and people's private vehicles. I'm not so sure. Kind of like the Uber delivery of health. Damn it all says before Justin Trudeau, people could afford food and homes and wages kept up. But a decade later, here we are. Trudeau's not prime minister anymore. Mark Carney is. Interesting and encouraging results, by the way, on recent employment numbers, federal employment numbers. I'm not sure if you guys have seen that, but they're ticking up. Whether or not you're going to give credit to the prime minister or this government for that, or whether that's global factors or other factors, obviously that's something that you can sort out on your own, but there are positive trends. That's not to say that people aren't still experiencing the affordability crisis. They absolutely are, and it is a very real issue. And if Donald Trump wasn't in the White House, affordability probably would have been the number one election issue in the most recent federal election at the end of April. But of course, it was Canada's relationship with the United States. That was very apparent. Do you agree? The Trump situation, Canada-U.S. relationship, number one federal election issue over affordability. Pollsters said 100%. That it was.
It took over everything, right?
But for a lot of people, it's interesting, right? And it all kind of like braids in together. There's common threads that work together, right? Like things like tariffs that slow the economy and cancel trade and all that also affects the economy, also affects employment or unemployment, et cetera. So, I mean, it all kind of fits together. But affordability in housing, for a lot of folks, that's much more relevant to them on like a 100%. Day-to-day basis than what's happening with Donald Trump's White House.
But we're not inundated with that on social media. We're not shown that in our newsfeed constantly. It's buried beneath Trump going off and attacking the world and us trying to protect ourselves. And some people say that played in Carney's favor, especially when he started saying he didn't, Trump was saying he didn't really like Pierre Poilievre, and it was looking like Carney had a better plan than Poilievre to deal with Trump. But in the end, I think, and people will also say that that's what won Carney the election. Well, I mean, of course, trending issues during an election are always going to influence outcomes of election regardless. You can't pause the news cycle, right? So,
Chantel says, I would like to know what's happening with my child when they're not in my care, as it's my job to protect them, but a simple name change isn't going to kill my love for them or my want to understand. Katie's watching us live on X right now. You can catch Real Talk, by the way. If you're new to the show, if this is your first time watching it, you can catch us live streaming weekdays, 8:30 Mountain Time on Instagram, X, Facebook, LinkedIn, TikTok, YouTube, and the Mixlr live streaming audio app. That's all presented by California Closets. Katie says, I'm in contact with like every single recall organizer. This is the Alberta Resistance. Says, I'm also sick of the premier saying that unions and the NDP are involved in recalls. That is a zero. Yeah, I don't know. I guess we don't really know, do we? There's some interesting reporting that's happening right now, in particular with one conservative MLA, Nathan Newdorf. There's a Reddit thread on this that they believe that supporters of his are actually initiating the recall against him so they can control it and suppress it. Whether or not that's the truth remains to be seen. This is just the Real Talk rumor mill reporting, and you can find out more on Reddit. But yeah, there's a lot happening with those recall petitions. It says a lot when you're closing in on 20, and the story developed further with the addition of 3 more UCP MLAs, bringing it to 17, but an NDP MLA as well. How long until this turns into a real tit for tat, where you have basically in almost every riding across the province, people fighting it out, trying to remove the MLA that represents or that was elected under the party banner that they don't support? I don't think that that's what the spirit of this is. I say that with my tongue in cheek, because it's definitely not the spirit of what this is all about. Check out our Dwayne Brad interview for more on that. That said, power to the people, and you have every right to do it, and the legislation has made it easier for you to do it. If you are initiating a recall, if you're participating in one, you want to give us an inside peek, send us an email to talk@ryanjesperson.com. Dubious, just joining us, says, I slept in. It looks like I missed a dumpster fire. I don't think it was a dumpster fire today. I think that we have some vigorous and passionate disagreement with some of the Premier's takes in the live chat, for sure. And we have some supporters of the Premier in the live chat, too. I don't know if it was a dumpster fire. Boom Shanker X says governments are incapable of saying no anymore. We've been, pardon me, kids. Pardon me, folks. Boom Shanker's words, not mine. We've been sucking on the tit of easy money for far too long. Nia says safe kids from safe homes. Parents already know it's the kids from unsafe homes, unsafe environments, homes or foster care or caretakers that will be sacrificed for the UCP ideology. Talking about, in particular, that was Bill 9 off the top of my head, right? 14 is the recent one, transferring power to Amory. 9 was the notwithstanding clause on schools. 2 was the one ordering teachers back. Am I right on that? It's off the top of my head. Nick D says, don't give Calgary too much credit on the property taxes. Says Calgary's raiding the emergency funds they hold, and they're going to need to replenish those. Any discount now will cost much more in the future. Maybe a fair point. Alberta Ganger says Calgary's reducing services and raising user fees. That's not an example that Edmonton should be following. I guess that also probably depends on who you ask, right? For sure. Damn it all says teachers shouldn't be pushing ideology. That was Tommy's point on the rainbow crosswalk. I don't know. I don't know if teachers are pushing ideology aside from things like acceptance, inclusion, the types of things that I think we could probably use more of, things we want our kids to understand, right? Would you agree?
Mm-hmm.
Do we agree? Is that controversial? Yeah. Acceptance, inclusion. I was just in a school no longer than 72 hours ago. No, that's a lie.
You taking night courses?
It was like 5 days ago. I don't know how I do back in a classroom.
I'm kidding.
But I was in a school for parent-teacher interviews just a short time ago, within the last week. And I didn't know PTIs.
Aren't they great?
Yeah. Well, I mean, actually, ours went okay. It went very differently than how I think mine went for my parents back in the day. Because the teachers that I had back in the day were navigating. Neither of us knew this, nor I nor them knew that it was a budding talk show host that was in the back of the class trying to make everybody laugh. But the feedback was always the same every single year. I just want to say this. When I was in the school, there was a lot about pride. And before anybody gets triggered, I'm not talking about the festival. I'm talking about the spirit of the word and what it represents. And many of the teachers had different acronyms for pride on the doors of their classrooms, and things that like the word inclusion, even things like they were talking about just what it means to be a gracious human, holding the door open for people, accepting people, being gracious to people, including people in play on the playground, having pride in your school, having pride in your friendships. I didn't see any indoctrination on gender identity. I didn't see anything on the walls or otherwise that would lead me to believe that teachers are spending all this free time they have to try to convince kids to reverse the way that they were born or to ask their parents for surgery. I didn't see anything like that. Goramut says, nice job, though, guys, for liking the show. I appreciate that encouragement. If you are watching us live on YouTube, go ahead and give us a like. Subscribe to our YouTube channel while you're at it.
Yeah,
and,
please.
If you're so led, feel free to invest in a YouTube channel membership. Why don't we do the soft announcement right now? By the way,
I would love to.
Know. Tuesday on the 23rd
of
December.
I can't wait to see you all.
This is going to be fun. So this will be exclusively for our YouTube channel members. These are Real Talkers, Real Deal, and Real VIP, plus our Real Talk Patreon supporters. And you can learn more about Real Talk's Patreon benefits at RyanJesperson.com. Just click on the Connect link. On the 23rd of December, it's a Tuesday morning, you and I will be rolling out our annual Real Talk VIP Zoom Christmas party.
A little peek behind the curtain. We usually roll in like our pajamas and our Christmas sweaters. We've got a little Bailey's in our coffee in the morning. It's more relaxed, but this one's gearing up to be a big one. And we try to get everyone in on Zoom. I don't know. It's crazy. You were telling me yesterday, like once you get a certain max on Zoom, you got to pay a little extra. Yeah. And I was looking, I was like, I don't know. This is going to be a big one, but, We like to give away some prizes. We like to talk about what our plans are for the holidays. We let you ask some questions.
Little Q&A. I always look forward to the Q&A.
Off the record, you can swear at us. You can throw your...
Well...
I'm just kidding. it's pretty friendly.
If it's funny, you can swear at us. If it's funny.
But it's a little extra, and we do some trivia. We give you some behind-the-scenes stuff. It's really fun, and it sends us off with our... And I know you love this. Buckets full for the holidays.
I agree. So that'll be the 23rd of December. That'll be exclusively on Zoom for our Real Talk channel members and for our Patreon supporters. Patreon supporters, check your email for the Zoom link, and for our YouTube channel members, you'll be able to access in the YouTube community. We'll have further details on that Zoom link, and we look forward to chatting with you all on the 23rd of December. It's one of our favorite holiday traditions, and you get to see me in a toque and a hoodie and a little bit more chilled out than usual.
Yeah, he comes in his Snoop Dogg festive sweater.
Yeah, I might have to wear that one again. I really love that one.
Yeah.
Justin says, listen, Jespo, I agree that you guys have talked about the notwithstanding clause. It just feels like the collective feeling overall has moved on. Justin, I feel you. I get it. Says, and that's part of the firehouse tactics. It's tough to keep attention on anything for that matter. It's 100% true. The questions I would ask the Premier a week from now would be totally different than the questions I would have asked her a week ago, right? Tracy D says, the reason your son's teacher can't talk about situations with you at parent-teacher interviews is they are not allowed to talk about things. Think about that. You have to talk about it. They cannot. Chantel says, this memorandum of understanding, Alberta, Ottawa, Real Talkers all over the map right now, which I love, says it's really not that important, but we won't hold it against you guys. The rest is certainly valid, even if she didn't answer with substance. I mean, the way that politicians answer questions tells you all you need to know. People will say, well, that was a non-answer. I say, well, a non-answer is an answer.
100%.
Right?
Yeah.
A non-answer is definitely an answer.
Explorer Hollis wondering if they sign up for sponsorship today, or membership rather, on YouTube.
100%.
100%. If you
sign up by the 22nd.
Sign up by the 22nd. You will be in our Real Talk Zoom party on the 23rd.
Absolutely 100%. Oh, man. Alberta Girl says this government's paying people off with government contracts. They're paying for support and silence. I will say allegedly. It's also proven to be somewhat of a litigious government. So I don't know that we want to get sued. But, hey, I mean, what do they say if it quacks like a duck and
if it walks like a duck,
walks like a duck,
sounds like a duck,
sounds like a duck,
probably a duck.
It could be a loon.
Yeah. I have a friend who every time I say something he doesn't agree with, he says allegedly. And it just pisses me off.
Yeah.
Allegedly.
Cassandra says, I really hope that there was some question around AISH. We did not get around to AISH. Says, how can this government be so cruel as to kick people with severe disabilities off AISH? Send me more on that, Cassandra, to talk@ryanjesperson.com. Guys, I'll give you the hint as well. If you just want to email me directly, it's ryan@ryanjesperson.com. But if you send it to that makes sure that Katy sees it as well, one of our valued team members. Katy does an amazing job with an inbox. One of you, who has it rolled in here, and dubious, says, it looks like I missed a tire fire. I don't think the show is a tire fire, but my inbox is absolutely a tire fire at all times. So talk@ryanjesperson.com. Make sure that Katy sees it too, and it's on our radar. Gormut says it's absolutely bonkers. When Premier was asked about puberty blocker drugs, she begins talking about cutting body parts off.
Yeah.
It shows that there's no interest here in honest answers. Noob, try again. I'll write to you, Johnny, in a second. Noob says, Danielle Smith is a fantastic politician, but that doesn't mean that she's making good decisions or doing what's right. It'll take years to dig ourselves out of the damage that's being done here, and we're only halfway through the term.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's concerning, and it's kind of sad when I hear the Premier talk like that, if I'm going to be honest. And the other thing is we don't have definitive numbers. Believe me, I've dug for definitive numbers on simple things like the amount of younger people who take puberty blockers and then fully transition with gender affirming surgery. We just don't have definitive numbers. So anytime I hear a politician or someone on a podcast or even news anchors try to say a number, I'm like, where are you getting this number from? Yeah. And then I also didn't like, shifting the perspective to like, well, in Norway or Sweden, like small European countries where small tests are performed with like 55 people, and then that generates a number that people use a percentage or whatever, a fact in an argument. It's not relevant.
Ambustion says, Jespo, that's fair. Your take on healthcare, but your perspective is from the upper end of the economy. Says that's no shade. It's just the people most affected make a lot less. Yeah, I think, generally speaking, my family's middle class. We're a middle class family. We're not wealthy. But I also recognize that, and this, again, I mean, I didn't sort of at the outset today determine to make this show a recurring theme around all politics is personal, but it sure is. And I'll absolutely take your point that it is different. I told you that somebody close to me within the last couple of years was desperate for a diagnosis related to their inner workings, to their inner health. And it was something that was a major impact on her quality of life in a negative way, and she needed answers. She was desperate for answers and couldn't get in for an MRI and ended up paying for one out of pocket. She's not wealthy. She's a public servant. She does not come from a wealthy family. She comes from a middle-class family, and they paid out of pocket to get the MRI. I recognize that that's not an option for everybody. For them, it was a huge financial decision. I think it was like $1,500, Johnny, or $1,800, whatever it was. It's a lot. That's a lot for middle-class folks. But that was something that they prioritized, and they were able to do it. And I know, because I talked to her about it, that she had mixed feelings about doing it. I know that she was able to get resolution on a health front and get a diagnosis that she desperately needed, and her life and her lifestyle and her quality of life has dramatically improved as a result. I understand why she did it. I know that many people believe that you shouldn't even have the option to do that. I know that many people strongly believe you should absolutely have the option to do that. I recognize it's not an option for everybody, for sure. And I'll make a commitment to you that will continue to represent that perspective as part of these conversations, Ambustion, and I appreciate your comment in the chat, for sure. Metamodern says it's okay to disagree respectfully like Jespo's doing, but I do think that the perspective is fairly privileged. Maybe. And yeah, I'll acknowledge privilege where it exists. Different people, I mean, everybody's got their own lens through which they see everything. I would say this, though, this show does seek in earnest. We say this all the time, seek to understand in earnest. And so if you hear something on the show from me, from Johnny, from one of our guests that you think, absolutely demands a follow-up through a different lens, send us that email to talk@ryanjesperson.com. I mean, we get a ton of emails. We do our best to read as many as we can. We respond to even more of them personally and privately when we don't have time to read them on the show.
I'm going to get a ton of emails now. You opened me up to...
I haven't told anyone your email
Only
address.
Only email Ryan. Don't listen to anything I say.
talk@ryanjesperson.com. How about this one? Carney instills confidence in the country, but affordability crisis will not go away until this government adopts cheap food policies. They'd probably want to call it affordable food policies. If you work in sales, you never want to use the word cheap. Affordable food policies and subsidized farmers like Trump's $12 billion bailouts on farms. I don't know what's going on in South America there. Katie says you got to get Dr. Paul Parks back on for an interview, former or past president, they would say, with the Alberta Medical Association. Yeah, man, I mean, he's obviously... That guy's shot from the hip and is a great interview. We should get him back at some time soon. Appreciate it. Cassandra says, Jespo, I do know, in particular, when you're questioning, and I'm just saying I don't know. I'm not questioning. I'm saying I don't know whether or not the NDP or unions are involved in these recall petitions. Says, I've been a part of the first ones, and there's no unions behind them. Sure. I mean, I think people are right. People are rightfully looking at how Edmonton's, I'm not comparing the situations, Edmonton's mayoral election, Edmonton's recent municipal election, different than the recall process provincially, but it's all political process, and unions and the NDP at arm's length or otherwise absolutely were involved in the Andrew Knack campaign through that Working Families Edmonton initiative. That's a fact, and it was very effective. Nothing that they did, as far as I know, was illegal or against the law. They were just very well organized. They mobilized very well, and they won. So I think that people are probably looking at that in so many ways as, big C conservative or so-called right-wing special interest groups may have been supportive of other political parties in Calgary and Edmonton in particular. The left didn't have its hands clean on it. They were involved as well. I don't know about the recall petition. I'll take your word for it, but I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised by anything right now. Aaron says, most teachers and educators understand outing a child before they're ready can be detrimental, if not worse. This will contribute to children not being willing to reach out for needed supports. Others of you sharing your own thoughts on what could cut wait times when it comes to Alberta's healthcare delivery, in particular surgeries, in particular ERs. SRK says, is somebody really complaining about sidewalk chalk? I mean, like, it washes right off. Yeah, Tommy, I don't know Tommy personally. He doesn't strike me as the type of guy who would ban his kids from drawing rainbows, but I don't know. Rainbows are a big part of the Noah's Ark story, man. They're not going to wash the rainbow from the Bible, are they? Is that going to be the next round of edits?
I don't know a person in the world that, after a summer rainfall sees a rainbow and gets angry. I don't get it.
Well, I know a lot of people feel like the rainbow was co-opted by the gay community. They do feel like the rainbow was co-opted.
I think it's also the government weather manipulation.
Yeah, I guess. Shout out to Sharon Morin, who's just become a Real Talk YouTube channel member. We will see you December 23rd at our exclusive annual Real Talk VIP holiday Zoom party.
Wear your ugly Christmas sweaters and Santa hats.
Yeah, absolutely 100%. We could go all day on this. I know that Ambus says I'm a bit behind, but with this Zoom VIP Christmas party, it must be the only time we don't have to deal with the trolls. Says the cheap bastards at the War Room won't splurge for membership, apparently. There may be some trolls in there, but we might have some fun with them. The thing about it is it's a Zoom party.
Yeah.
We got to get everyone to turn their cameras on. We want to see what you look like. Yeah. We want to put faces to names.
We've said this before. I mean, the world is quite a argumentative, quite a tire fire, as you've been alluding to earlier, when you're online. But when people see each other's faces, all that cools, man, and especially in person. But that's why we do it. We love to get all our listeners together, be able to see each other, maybe see, you don't have to show your home, but we see, kind of your dwellings in the background, your family members, pets always stop by. It's great. It's a fun time no matter who's there.
Yeah, it's so fun. Noob Try Again says he may show up as a counter troll.
Ooh.
I like that. I like that idea. And then Lauren is just pushing a few buttons here, I'm sure. Hey, my cousin, Jorgen Jesperson, has just signed up as a Real Talker, a YouTube channel membership. Buddy, I can't wait to see your face. It's been way too long. This guy, you want to talk about people. This guy, how many cousins do I have?
I was just going to say, bro. So many Jespersons.
Well, yeah.
Can't keep track of
them. If a plague could be a positive, we are a plague. We spread like the plague.
Like magpies.
So it was Jens Jesperson came over from Denmark as the Germans were encroaching and the border was moving, and came with his sons, and they moved with Jesse and Andrew, and they married sisters. Jesse and Andrew did, and that was when they established, before Alberta was a province, John, the Jesperson dairy farms. Right now along today's Yellowhead Highway, and Jorgen is a descendant of that same line.
Did you see his comment?
He says the Jesperson plague.
Oh, you're feeding the trolls now.
I'm going to hear about that at the next family reunion. But honestly, that just made my day. I know I'm getting a little personal, a little in the weeds here, but Jorgen, I haven't seen his name for a while. That guy's got one of the biggest hearts going, and it's amazing.
And we'll see him December 23rd.
Yeah, and he says that his uncle Ivan, who was my grandpa Stan's cousin, he says that the Jespersons back in the day, they snuck in on a boat along with all the cows. So look at that. Even the original Jespersons, illegal aliens. Hey, look at that.
Undocumented?
Allegedly. Allegedly. No, I'm sure they were documented. I don't want to disgrace the family history. Jorgen, it's great to see you. You can sign up for YouTube channel membership on our YouTube channel. Of course, you can become a Real Talk Patreon supporter. Go to our website, ryanjesperson.com. While we're there, let me show you this. Again, ryanjesperson.com is where you can find things like merch. It's where you can watch our episodes, learn more about our sponsors. We encourage you to support them wherever you can. It's also where you can sign up for the Real Talk Pond Hockey Classic. That's coming up Saturday, January 31st at Larry Alexiak Field in St. Albert. Again, ryanjesperson.com. Look for the events link. Click on Pond Hockey. That will take you to the registration page in partnership with our friends at the Canadian Progress Club St. Albert. This tournament raises tens of thousands of dollars every single year for very worthy charities, including Uncles and Aunts at Large and Kids Sport. There's room for 24 teams, 6 players per team. You can register a team today for $600 with the proceeds going to charity. We have one VIP package and one only, which includes your team registration. It includes 6 tickets to the Oilers Wild game that night. You're going to be partying with us, 6 seats on the Golden Bus, and all the beers you can drink. That's $2,500 with all the proceeds going to charity thanks to a generous donation from our friends at Molson. Register for the Real Talk Pond Hockey Classic today. Again, that's Saturday, January 31st at Larry Alexiak Field in St. Albert. Our live chat powered by our friends at Park Power, your friendly local utilities provider. If you check out parkpower.ca/realtalk, you'll find exclusive promo codes. This could save you up to $150 off your very first bill from Park Power if you bundle internet, electricity, and natural gas. Learn more about that, including those promo codes and the links to sign up at parkpower.ca/realtalk. Our friends at The Helm, they're the ones that have me looking as good as I do today, Johnny, and they're the ones that have their 2025 gift guide out at thehelmclothing.com. They have selected carefully their top winter picks to suit every personality and every style. If someone in your life, difficult to buy for but appreciates fine fashion, including custom suits or casual wear, look no further than thehelmclothing.com. Don't forget, you can keep a few bucks in your pocket if you use the promo code REALTALK, all one word. They'll knock 10% off your online order. That's REALTALK, all one word, at thehelmclothing.com. As you're considering your charitable giving through the holiday season, we encourage you to support UCAN Youth Services. This is a nonprofit charitable organization that does unbelievable work helping hundreds of young people every single year out of harm's way and onto a path of economic independence. We're asking you to support their stocking stuffer drive online at ucan.ca. These are the gift of confidence, essentially, for young people entering the workforce. Okay, they've left the troublesome relationships behind. They've committed to a learn while you earn employment readiness program through UCAN, and now they're getting ready to show up to their first job. We want to fill stockings with the little things that make a difference for them. Coffee gift cards, bus tickets, toques, mittens, hygiene kits, lunch gift cards, power banks so they can charge their phones, reusable water bottles, or of course you can stuff a full stocking for $100. You can do so today by visiting UCAN.ca. Thanks in advance to everybody who does that. And of course, coming up on Thursday this week, another edition of Alberta Wins, presented by our friends at Play Alberta. You can send us your story of an Albertan winning on the national or international stage. Last week it was a charitable focus. What will it be this Thursday? talk@ryanjesperson.com is where you can submit yours. With casino winners every hour, jackpots worth millions, and revenue that stays in the province, there's never been a better time to sign up. And right now you can score a $50 casino bonus when you make a minimum $50 deposit with the code RYAN50, RYAN50. That's RYAN50 for a $50 casino bonus at playalberta.ca or on the Play Alberta app. You must be 18 or over to play, and if you do gamble, please use your game sense. Look at that, Explorer Hollis, a real deal supporter, which is awesome to see as our YouTube channel subscriptions continue to grow. It gives you an opportunity. You can choose your own avatar. You get some cool different options in the live chat and the like. Thanks to everybody. It also, of course, helps us keep the lights on here at the show. I wanted to read this hilarious email that we got from Denise just the other day. She says, Jespo, I'm usually 1 to 4 days behind on my Real Talk podcast. She says, so I've almost caught up on the shows from last week. We sure appreciate it, Denise. Says, but after that extra long episode, she goes, I'm going to rewind back to November 20th when you talked to Corb Lund. Elizabeth May was on that episode as well. She says, I love him, by the way. The words that came out of my mouth while pouring a coffee were, damn, I need something lighter. I need something lighter to listen to after Real Talk, talking about coal and environmental liabilities and the like. She says, so I went straight to my true crime murder podcasts. Johnny, she needed something lighter than
relax.
Real Talk. What a way to relax.
You know what? And this isn't like a gender thing, but the women do this. Yeah. Carly, can you I wish we had Carly on the
Real
mic
Talk's
there.
official photographer, Carly Watson,
In the
is in the
back there.
background.
But
There she is, doing an amazing job as always.
Sometimes I'll hear a bit of my partner's, and I'm like, this is relaxing you? He was hiding in the attic for 2 weeks before he strangled her with a clothing wire and then it disposed of. I'm like, you're going to bed in 30 minutes.
It's less troubling than political talk about coal. So there you go from Denise. She says, anyway, it's been a heavy load as of late. And she says, and to be honest with you, she says that's one reason why I don't watch the news anymore, but I need to stay in the know. And so that's been your job for me over the last 5+ years. And I appreciate you guys for that. She says, happy 5 years, by the way, to you and Johnny and to the rest of your crew. That from Denise, which was an amazing email to receive.
Thank you, Denise.
Sure, appreciate that. We also wanted to put the call out as we're getting ready to wrap here, and we'll do this now. I read, it was from Lori, I think it was, in Positive Reflections, in our most recent episode. That's the first episode of every week, presented by Solar by Kubi. This was what we believed, silly me, what we believed to be a record-setting display of loyalty to the Real Talk podcast, in particular on Spotify. And so this is the call out as we wrap the show today. For those of you that are listening to us on Spotify, take a look at your Spotify Wrapped. Lori's was, off the top of my head, I believe it was 13,477 minutes listened.
Exactly.
Which put Lori into the top 0.5%, and it earned her a personalized mail out of Real Talk merch that you cannot otherwise buy. If you can beat Lori, prove it to us in an email to talk@ryanjesperson.com. We got something special for you. We'll show you the top 3 by the end of the week. We'll talk soon.
Real Talk is hosted by Ryan Jesperson, executive producer Josh Dunford, technical producer John Hicks, general manager Katie Cook-Chivers, account coordinator Lawrence Derlego, human resources Lena Shepard, website design Mike Johnston, voiceover by me, Carrie Skelton, member emerita Julie Rohr. Real Talk is recorded in Edmonton, Alberta on Treaty 6 territory, the traditional and ancestral territory of the Cree, Dene, Blackfoot, Saulteaux, and Nakota Sioux, home to the Métis settlements and the Métis Nation of Alberta. Real Talk is a relay project. For more, check out ryanjesperson.com.